Tokyo. Olympic tennis. It was blistering hot and humid.
Medvedev is laboring right now.
Russian Daniil Medvedev, second in the world, was struggling. After 2 medical timeouts because of heat, he and the umpire had this exchange.
What can I do? I'm a fighter. I will finish the match, but I can die. If I die, actually, I'm going to take responsibility because it's a very bad company.
Wow, Medvedev just saying that the conditions are terrible. Feels terrible.
Medical!
He wasn't the only athlete wilting.
Hot, humid weather plays havoc with a marathon.
The marathon and race walking had to be relocated out of Tokyo, and still hot.
It's much warmer than expected.
Spain's tennis star Paula Badoza had to withdraw because of severe heat stroke. Holding another Olympics in midsummer is tempting more scorching competitions. And Europe is warming faster than other continents. But it's not just Olympics. Fires, floods, melting is forcing us to confront how is climate change impacting sport? And can sport adapt?
We're seeing more heat waves now than we ever have before. 15 years, it's
We
really
asked
peaked.
Madeleine Orr,
Now,
a sports
that's a
ecologist at the
area.
University of Toronto.
On the field.
She recently wrote Warming Up, How Climate Change is Changing Sport.
The problem becomes if you're not able to sweat, you're not able to cool down, your inner organs are going to start to get pretty warm as well. And that's where we start to see major catastrophic incidents of heat stroke, for example. So the big bad is heat.
The signs are everywhere.
More than hot enough to cause serious harm to human health. Temperatures are now set to climb even higher.
Now, July is on track to be the hottest month in recorded history.
Extreme weather is disrupting world competition. A super typhoon forced World Cup rugby to cancel games for the first time ever.
Typhoon Hagibis that is heading towards Japan is predicted to have very significant and widespread impact.
Pakistan's historic floods swamped most soccer fields, except one, mercifully on higher ground.
It became the medical distribution site. It became where they served food to the community because people know where the soccer field is, but it also was the place that was dry.
Wildfires last summer dispersed red smoke thousands of kilometers, forcing pro sport to cancel games. Under the smoke, there was no community sport either.
That's the challenge, is if you live near a wildfire, you're probably not competing. It just shuts it down, and those kids definitely are feeling it.
In summer or winter, heat is a weapon. World Cup ski events in the Alps were canceled 9 times this year because of snowless slopes.
We are seeing a 35-day drop on both sides of the Atlantic in the skiable days, roughly. 300 athletes wrote a letter to Federation of Skiing last year asking for more action on this.
The climate is becoming a ferocious opponent. Just ask the athletes. Olympians warned in June of health risks, even with specialized heat training, releasing a major report, Rings of Fire.
If we are competing in these hotter conditions, it's definitely scary.
You're going to have athletes who are barely alive and unable to perform at their best.
It's Vincent Lapointe of Canada picking up the silver.
Laurence Vincent Lapointe, who won silver and bronze, knows all about too much heat.
This was exactly what never give up means.
Her victories in Tokyo even more precious after a heat-related collapse. She told us she's never forgotten it.
I had an hour and a half to recover from my first race of the day on to my next race. Suddenly, like I said, I cannot move. I'm laying down in the shade because there's nothing to do. I'm just like feeling too sick to move. I had to jump into an ice bath. After that, they had to lay me down in a AC room with electrolyte water and lots of protein bars and just pressure sleeves on my legs in the air and everything. And everyone was worried, me included.
The heat and humidity almost ended the dream she'd had since childhood.
So the problem is most people think of what it was like when they were young, right? when I was a kid, you know, you had to drink a bit and you had to put your sunscreen and you were fine. But nowadays, if you don't drink like 3 times as much and you don't do this and that, like very, very specific things for cooling yourself in between races, then you can drop.
Madeleine Orr is urging athletes to advocate for change, using their power and influence as flag bearers for their country and for climate action, including breaking ties with some sponsors.
Athletes are competing for teams that might be sponsored by an entity that doesn't necessarily want to talk about climate change. So for example, if you're competing on Team Canada, which is sponsored at the moment by Petrocan and RBC, 2 brands obviously connected to funding fossil fuels and producing fossil fuels, it can feel a bit tricky of figuring out, right, like how exactly would I approach some of these issues.
Of course, you're talking in the year that the Edmonton Oilers went to the Stanley Cup.
Yes.
That's not a popular opinion.
It's not, and here's the thing, right? It's really tricky because you're now having to, if you walk away from fossil fuels, to say, okay, well, what are we going to replace it with?
The Olympics have always been about faster, higher, stronger, and now hotter. Athletes need protection from the ravages of our changing climate.